Welcome to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms. We're resuming our series on profitable niches in real estate this week, and we've got one lots of folks are interested in. International investing. Is offshore property right for you? Today on the Real Estate Guys radio program.
Stop for a moment. Why are you listening to this show? Are you dreaming of a bigger, brighter financial future? More personal freedom to live life on your own terms? What if there was just one skill that could make it happen? There is. Sales. Robert Kiyosaki says every entrepreneur must be good at sales. It's true for investors too. Sales is how you attract money, people, and opportunities. Sales is the skill used to negotiate deals and lead your team. Sales skills are essential to success. The good news is, it's a learnable skill. The great news is, we've created a 2-day interactive workshop to teach those skills to you. Make plans today to attend How to Win Funds and Influence People, Mastering the Art of Financial Selling. For dates and details, send an email to sales@realestateguysradio.com or visit realestateguysradio.com and look under events. Gain the skills you need to succeed. Email sales@realestateguysradio.com or look under the events tab at realestateguysradio.com.
Memphis is famous for being the home of the king of rock and roll, but it's also the king of cash flow. If you're looking for affordable cash flow properties, it's hard to beat Memphis. Get your portfolio rocking and more cash flowing your way by calling Terry Kerr at Mid-South Home Buyers. Terry's the king of turnkey properties. Contact Terry through the resource section at realestateguysradio.com. And be sure to order Terry's tips for turnkey rental property investing report. It's free. Just send your request to turnkey@realestateguysradio.com. Welcome to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms. With me, as usual, financial strategist, co-host Russell Gray.
Hey, Robert.
You know, we've been doing this series of profitable niches in real estate. Took the last couple of weeks off to bring you the shows from the 2018 Investor Summit. Oh my gosh, I don't know about you, I'm barely recovered.
Yeah, that's an understatement. You know, every year we go do this thing, and part of it is just getting ready to go. You know, anytime like before you get ready to go on vacation or take any trip, it's crunch time. And it's amazing how productive you can be right there in that period of time. But then you're gone, and then everything stacks up, and then you come back. But more than that, just the amount of information, the number of relationships, how much follow-up there is to do. And it's just such an exciting time. I can't believe we've been doing this thing for 16 years.
It's crazy. And we're doing it again in a 17th year. So make sure you get on the advance notice list and come with us. So you'll see all the information at the website at realestateguysradio.com. We're back talking about these niches. And the idea is, as a real estate investor, there's all kinds of different types of real estate you can invest in. And we've devoted several shows here to different potential niches. And today, our niche is international property, investing offshore, investing your dollars somewhere other than where you live. Now, that can be as simple as across a county or a state line, but I think for many people, the idea of international investing in another country, is a bit exciting and a bit daunting.
Yeah, you know, the thing about that, though, really, if you just think about it, think of all the things you've done in your life, whatever it is. I remember the first time I got my very first job, I was 14 years old. I got a job at a donut shop, and I had to wait on the counter for the very first time. I didn't know how to work the cash register. I'd never waited on anybody. I had no idea how to make change. It was so intimidating to me. And I can think of, you know, the first time I walked into the locker room on a football team, I didn't even know how to put my pads on. When I decided I wanted to ride dirt bikes, and just how much I didn't know. But, you know, if you really think about it, anything you want to go do in life is just a matter of education. And a lot of times the quickest way to learn is to go alongside somebody who's already been there, done that. And so I think that that's also a very important part of learning how to do investing of any kind, but especially offshore or out of area investing.
You know, one of the things I like to do when we get a big crowd of people is I ask them, hey, raise your hand if you think it's risky to invest outside of your home country. And a lot of hands go up. And then I'll say, okay, great. Now raise your hand if you think it's risky to have all of your investment capital tied to one nation's economy and currency. And a whole different set of hands go up, right? Because everything in real estate has risk. It's just, where is the risk versus the reward? And I think today it is a smaller world in a lot of ways. We deal every day with products, services, places we want to go on vacation that are not what we're used to. They're not our neighborhood. They're not just even our own language. And I think that it is a smaller world in many ways, and it seems like there's opportunity everywhere, and there is. So I guess the fundamental question is, if there's tons of opportunity where you are, why would you consider going elsewhere? And I think a big part of it, of course, is diversification. Whether it's just the markets that you're in, or the product types, or the kinds of people you deal with, or the kinds of folks that pay the income that is represented by your real estate, the bigger that mix is, the more variety you have.
Well, I think the other thing, too, is just that a lot of people are living in areas that are fairly mature. And mature areas are great, but a lot of the great growth opportunities have come and gone. I would have loved to have been able to buy into, the San Francisco Bay Area in the 1950s. But that train has left the station, if you will.
Right.
And so there's opportunities in emerging markets, and sometimes you have to look outside wherever you happen to be. It's great to live in a place that's fully mature. You got great infrastructure, great services, and very mature economy, and all that's great. The challenge is you don't get those opportunities to have maybe explosive growth. You don't get a chance maybe to be on the front end of an emerging trend. And so this is the reason that anybody would go look in any type of investing to get off the beaten path a little bit and go look for where the path of progress is, where the puck is headed, so to speak.
Anytime we look at a new market, we always want to know what the fundamentals are, and that's important, what we call market analysis. And then very closely behind that, we start putting a team together. Who knows the market? Who are great team members? And I think when it comes to international investing, or investing in another country than the one you're used to, there's just a whole learning curve, and then there's the relationship curve. And so the long distance realities of investing somewhere, whether it's 2 states away or 2 countries away, is that you're not going to be able to go there every weekend and check on your property. But you know what? Most of us don't want to do that anyway. When you start off, you may think, well, I'm going to buy another house in my neighborhood so that I can keep an eye on it. Nothing wrong with that as long as you live in an area where there's good rental property and it makes financial sense. But I always say live where you want to live and invest where the numbers make sense, because it is a big world. And we certainly have had some experience, mostly positive, but I would say a little bit negative, in venturing outside of the markets we know well. I like to maintain this premise that you can't know more than about a half a dozen markets really well, but what you can have is team. And you talked earlier, Russ, about coming alongside folks. That's another way to find folks who are actually making it work in these markets and see if there's an opportunity to support them.
Yeah, well, that's the key. I mean, if you really think about it, I just look at our evolution. And in the beginning, super aggressive, super optimistic, super seeing the best side of everything. And we run in, we meet somebody, look like a nice person, and they tell a good story, and boom, we're in a deal. And then we find out that maybe we didn't spend enough time on the front end developing that relationship. The last out of area offshore market we went to, we spent years in before we actually did a deal. And so it's a big investment, and sometimes it's a hard investment to make if you're a small-time investor. That's where you have the opportunity. If you can come along somebody who's already done a lot of that groundwork, you still have to do your homework for sure, but you can compress timeframes a lot by going in under the wing of somebody who's already been there. So you shouldn't just invest in a market because you know somebody who's been there, but it certainly helps if the market looks good on its own merit and you happen to know people who have already been active and successful in a market. That is a big time saver.
Well, think about how people find markets they're interested in. They hear because, my buddy's investing in the apartments in this space, or, hey, I've got a friend who's got retail in this town, or, hey, I just have a friend who bought a resort property and they're making lots of money. You hear about a buzz and then you decide, well, maybe that's markets for me. And so as you're thinking about expanding your range, if you will, and looking at other places, just think of the types of property you'd like to see in your portfolio. One of the things we like, of course, is higher end properties. We love resort properties, what we call lifestyle investing, places where you wouldn't mind visiting for a couple of weeks. And hey, potentially that's a business expense and you could write it off and check with your tax professional. But if you're going to be going there anyway, or if it's a market that you like personally, that can be just a reason to consider that market over another. It's not the only reason. Sometimes you invest in a place because there's good opportunity, even though you don't personally engage in that type of real estate or even like the market that much. I remember the first time we went to Australia and invested in property. It turned out to be a really great investment because of the timing, not only with the real estate market, but also with the currency. It worked in our favor. but it's a long way away. I mean, I went 3 times, and gosh, long flights and jet lag. And then when you're dealing with your providers, the folks who are helping you out in your home country, and you're trying to make phone calls halfway around the world, I mean, it's just a lot. Not saying it isn't worth it, but that's kind of a big step. For some folks, they look at maybe a neighboring country and say, well, those folks speak the same language or similar to me. And well, I kind of understand the economy there because it's similar to what I'm used to. If you invest in college towns, where there's college towns in a lot of other countries. If you invest in resort areas, well, there's resort areas in a lot of different places. So I think rather than get overwhelmed by it, stick to some of the things that you already know and see if there's a way that you can play off that as you consider an international opportunity.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things in there that are really important. One is, I talk about all the time not doing the 2-step. A lot of times people say they will do anything for money because then if I make enough money, I can live how I want to live. And my rebuttal to that is always, hey, why don't you figure out how you want to live and then build your investing and build your business activities around that? And I think that's kind of what you're saying. I think the other thing that's worth mentioning too is just strategically understanding what's going on in the big picture economy. There's a wealth gap out there. There's a big gap. So, Kiyosaki's been telling us for the longest time that the rich are going to get richer, the poor are going to get poorer, or at least grow in numbers, and the middle class is going to get squeezed or crushed. And if you understand that, then you have a decision to make strategically as a real estate investor. Do I want to gravitate more towards the low end where there's sure to be lots of demand and lots of opportunity? Or do I want to gravitate more towards the top end? And it can be both, but the harder spot to make it is right there in that middle spot. And so one of the things that we've personally gravitated towards is the opportunity to work at the higher end and then incorporate that into that lifestyle. So it's not just investing, it's lifestyle investing. And that can be a lot of fun. If you like to travel, then going to a market offshore can make a lot of sense. And then if you can find a market that makes sense based on the metrics and the demographics and all of the fundamentals, and you say, gee, I'd like to be able to go visit that market on a regular basis for a lifestyle, now you're going to do the work because it doesn't feel like work. You're able to do what you want to do and you're able to go where you want to go and you wrap the business around it. So there are some things strategically to think about when you consider going offshore, and it isn't just the financial fundamentals or the return on investment. It's a kind of a total package. And I really think that should be true in all your investing, offshore or otherwise. But there's some real opportunities when you open up your geographic horizons to create more and better lifestyle investing opportunities for yourself.
We had a really cool experience during the summit. We stopped in Puerto Rico, and that's where we did our optional real estate shore excursion. And I was on the bus with Robert and Kim Kiyosaki, and we did a quick Facebook Live a couple of times, and they had some really interesting things to say. Robert stood up to the bus and said, one of the things that Kim and I always do when we travel is we always spend a day looking at real estate. And so this is great for us to be able to do this with all you guys because we would have done this anyway if we'd come to a town. It's one of the ways that we stay sharp as students. It's one of the ways that we stay together as a couple. And it's one of the ways that we find investment opportunities. So if you're a couple out there, this could be a thing that unites you around finding that next amazing international real estate opportunity. When we come back, we've got a guest who's done both. She's invested stateside as well as around the world, and she's got some great ideas today on the Real Estate Guys radio program.
Live nationwide, you're listening to the Real Estate Guys. Find out more at realestateguysradio.com.
This portion of the Real Estate Guys radio program is brought to you by International Coffee Farms, where you can own a parcel of land in your very own specialty coffee farm in Panama for as little as $15,000. Here's how it works. Deeded half-acre parcels entitled Specialty Coffee Farms in Boquete, Panama are turnkey managed professionally on your behalf by a team of local experts. Sustainable average income is estimated at 12%, and cash flow can begin within 12 to 15 months from the date of your parcel ownership. International Coffee Farms' mission is to own and operate specialty coffee farms that are economically, environmentally, and socially sustainable. As part of this mission, 20% of the gross profits of each farm is committed to a socially sustainable fund to improve the lives of the Panamanian coffee farm workers and their families. International Coffee Farms currently owns and operates 9 specialty coffee farms with half-acre parcels available for immediate ownership. To find out how you can become a coffee farm owner in Boquete, Panama, email coffee@realestateguysradio.com. That's coffee@realestateguysradio.com.
Have you decided to invest in real estate but find you don't have the time to evaluate your options? Successful real estate investing takes expertise, market knowledge, and time. Many affluent investors with busy schedules choose to rely on real estate experts. They partner with proven teams with a successful track record. Four Peaks Capital Partners have created a system which allows accredited investors an opportunity to invest in undervalued assets. If you're an accredited investor looking for passive income, call 8775-INCOME. That's 8775-INCOME, or visit privateincomeinvestments.com.
Hello, this is Robert Kiyosaki. I'm the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And if you're serious about learning how to invest in real estate, listen to the Real Estate Guys. They really know what they're talking about.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Guys radio program. Thanks for tuning into the show today. After a couple of weeks of the Summit at Sea, we're back to our series on profitable niches, different ways you can invest in real estate. And we're talking today about diversifying outside of the country you live in, international investing. And our guest today has done a lot of that. She's invested stateside, she's invested internationally, and she's developed both. Please welcome back to the program, Beth Clifford. How are you?
Great. How you doing, Robert?
Good. It's always good to see you, and always good to visit you on the job site.
That's great. Well, thanks for coming down. It's always great to talk with you, Robert. And plus, you've got such a great listening audience. So hello out there, all of you Real Estate Guys radio fans.
Aren't they something?
They are.
You got to spend some time with us at the Future of Money and Wealth. That was a great crowd.
It was amazing. What, 400 people down there?
Yeah.
What I love about the people that you work with, Robert, is that they're always positive people. They're like-minded, but they've found 1,000 different ways to invest in real estate. So I learn whenever I'm involved with any of the people that you get together. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Real estate is not just one thing. And today specifically, we're talking about investing outside of your home country. I think before we even start there, you know, as a real estate investor, first and foremost, and then of course we'll talk about development maybe after that, but you first invested in multiple states. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people think, well, I've got to be close to home. As soon as you cross a state line, a few things change.
They do. I've heard you say this, Robert, which is, you know, you need to live where you want to live and invest where the numbers make sense.
Right.
Correct? And so of course, it's always convenient if you can live and invest right in your own backyard. That's a great thing to go do.
Sure.
Yet, if you're looking at different opportunities, real estate is always about location. It's always about market. It's always about location. It's always about team, right? And so if you're going to look at different asset classes or you're going to look at different investment philosophies for your portfolio, then it almost always requires that you maybe look at a different market, which isn't right where your bedroom is.
Right.
And so you're going to have to get up and go move someplace, correct? And go do it. So, you know, so it's basically the same change as whether you go across a straight line or if you go across a foreign line or federal line. It's the same methodology that you're going to need to do, which is you're going to need to understand the market, the laws, the culture. It doesn't change, you know? Doing business in New York City is totally different than Ames, Iowa.
Right. Right. And you know, that's a good point.
And those are both in the United States.
They couldn't be more different, right? And it's because you mentioned the one part which is interesting is that the conventions change as you go to different places. The way business gets done, very formal in, say, New York City, right? In the Midwest, maybe a lot more casual. Some places, you know, there's title insurance and title companies do closings. Sometimes it's attorneys that do closings. So things do vary as you get across the state lines. But that's just a learning curve. And it certainly shouldn't keep people away from better opportunity.
No, and that's the whole thing. So I always look at it too from developing yourself as a real estate investor. It's like, how do you go take that muscle that you've built in potentially the market that you've really gotten to know? How do you go take all of that great learning and then expand it into another place and lever that learning into something else, but add new layers on top of it? So that could be either that you're moving into a new asset class, so you could be going from single family into multifamily.
Yep.
Well, that's a big change, correct? And that's a lot of learning to go do in order to go learn and how to be proficient inside of multifamily. But that's a really worthwhile movement forward for you. But that means a totally different way of investing, right? Different pro formas, different way that you're going to make money on it. The financials are going to be different. The bank financing is going to to be different, la, la, la. But it's only about 20% different than the original core that you were at. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Leveraging what you're already doing.
Yeah, absolutely. But now that extra 20% that you invest, now you've got a whole new world of an asset class that you've now become a champion and you become a professional in. That's really great. So that's one way, is to diversify asset class. The other would be to go look at and stay in your asset class and now move into a new market. And so then now you've got a whole new level of information that you need to know about the market that you're going to go do. So you're levering that asset class, but now you're learning all about a new market. And so then now you've created, go into across the state line, go into a different county. Even if you're, go and be in California and own real estate in San Francisco, but now go own single family residence in California. Now go own a single family residence in Sacramento.
Right.
Guess what?
Very different.
There's going to be different.
Yep.
It's going to be different. There's going to be different laws that are going to be applicable in each of those environments. Taxations are going to be different anyways. And so when you move to that new location, now you're learning about what due diligence do I need to do when I move to a new location, market, and how do I go do business in those particular locations. And then you can go do more and more and more of those and you get more comfortable with moving around in locations. And then just imagine that you're taking that two-prong approach. And so you may seesaw it where you'll leverage your asset class and move to a location. And I would recommend that you do that as opposed to going into new asset class and new location at the same time. Because then you're like, you've got to go learn the 20% in the new asset class and 20% in the new location at the same time. You know, you may want to think about how you go do that, because that's really a new business model.
Well, if you think about this 20%, that's an incremental increase. It's not 200%,
No.
right? And if I'm going to evolve as a real estate investor, there's a logic, which is get rich in a niche. Get really good at single family houses in Springfield. Well, okay, as long as that market remains vibrant. But when it doesn't, you better have a second horse to ride. At the same time, you meet real estate investors that one week are in industrial, and the next week they're in development, the next week they're in agriculture, and they can't figure out a center, and they're developing no expertise. So I think the point of being able to take what you already are good at and use that as you move forward to a different demographic or a different physical location makes a ton of sense.
It does. And that's what I love, Robert, about your team, because I go down and I find you found people who found so many different niches that they're great. Things that you've never thought about how to go make money on. Right?
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. In fact, we started this series of these profitable niches because we have so many listeners and students and people that are trying different things, but also getting really good at certain things. You know, when we thought about this show, we thought about international investing, and we know a lot of international investors, but many of them only invest in one other place. Whereas the reason I want to have you on the program is you continue to invest in your home country and you have sprouted wings and gone to other places. And so today you actually own, invest, and develop in more than one country. How do you manage that part of it?
Well, it's all about teams, right? And so I have a development company that's back in the United States that does everything that we do US based. And then I've set up really two different companies that mirror each other. And I've got the same thing that is a development company that is everything that's not US.
Right.
And you really don't, if you're going to go international, you really want to do that. You don't usually want to blend it. It doesn't mean that I don't use some of my resources that are US based to help and leverage that knowledge base into international. But from a corporation standpoint, you typically want to keep those two companies distinct from each other.
Yeah, good
They
point.
They can share intellectual property, they can share expertise, and I do between the two companies, but financially you typically want to keep them separate just because of the taxation and the best way to do it from a taxation perspective. You want to keep it separate.
And that makes a ton of sense just from the passive investor that decides they want to get a vacation condo in Mexico. It's probably going to be separate in a lot of ways, asset, entity, location, all that, for these reasons. And taxation is a big part of that. Neither one of us are tax professionals, but as soon as you cross a border, like a country border, now you just have to understand the tax treaty. Is there a tax treaty between nations? What does their taxation system look like? It's not hard. again, it's about a team finding that professional that can guide you.
Correct. And sometimes it's really worth for you to go do it. Back to your original, where we were talking about moving into a location, and it's like, even if you're getting rich in a niche, like you said, we always, you always be selling, always be closing, correct? I like to think you should always be learning. And so one of the things is that it always stretches your muscle to always be learning about different locations. And so it helps you understand better if you're looking at other locations about how can you take some of those best practices and bring it, even if you're getting rich in a niche.
Right.
But if you're going to go into another locale, you look at it from another perspective. You're like, all right, well, what are the federal or country taxes, and how are those treated? And then when I go into another locale, how does the U.S. look at it?
Yep.
And so what does that mean? Because as U.S. citizens, and I assume many of your, but not all of your listeners are U.S. citizens, but particularly for U.S. citizens, we're taxed on our worldwide income.
Right.
And the tax law that was put into place right at the end of calendar year 2017 had drastic changes to how federal taxation took place, repatriation that took place, but it still continued the benefit of owning real estate outside of the United States. And so it sort of had a catch-up clause. They called it the guilty tax. But then it continued to allow into the future the benefit of owning active corporations outside of the United States. And so when you get your mind around what the benefit of that is, of having active corporations outside the United States. And there's so many different tax strategies that it's really worthwhile for people who have a long-term, long runway in their life of being a real estate investor to go make that investment into looking into different jurisdictions.
Great point. Simon Black often talks about if you make these few strategic moves to diversify internationally and nothing changes or nothing bad happens or you don't have a big need to move outside, you're not any worse off for having certainly developed the knowledge and maybe a property or two. So I think certainly understand the tax part, but there's another big part, which is diversification, right? To have all your eggs in one country's basket is a little scary.
It is. And so when you diversify, you're diversifying obviously into market. You could be diversifying into an asset class that is potentially different than what you have. So I've diversified outside the country first and foremost into Caribbean resort. So you can't do Caribbean resort in the United States. And so,
No.
right? But you can do...
Maybe parts of Florida, be like that.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, so you could take parts of Florida and maybe think of it as Caribbean resort, but it isn't Caribbean resort. So now all of a sudden you've diversified into a different market if you want to go do it. I would look at it and say there's another thing to go in, which is we're looking at workforce housing, which is because there's such a great demand coming online and we've got markets that are booming, is that then also has secondary markets coming after it. And so we're looking at workforce housing as well. And so what is workforce housing? Workforce housing is multifamily.
Right.
So that means go back into, and we look at it, we go back into our U.S. investment, my U.S. development company, and we say, well, go take all of the knowledge that we have in multifamily, which is workforce housing,
Right.
correct?
Yep.
Take that knowledge and bring it over into the foreign investment and look and see how you go do those two things. Does that make sense?
It sure does. Lots to think about. We're talking about investing internationally outside your own borders with Beth Clifford. We'll have more when we come back. And we'll play real estate trivia next. You're tuned to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms.
Real estate investment advice right in your mailbox. Sign up for the free Real Estate Guys newsletter at realestateguysradio.com.
Hey, it's Robert Helms. Thanks so much for listening to the show today. I want to personally invite you to come see an amazing real estate market that combines excellent cash flow, offshore diversification, and what we affectionately call lifestyle investing. Come join me from May 25th to 28th in the beautiful country of Belize. The Real Estate Guys have been bringing investors to Belize for more than 10 years now, and our discovery trip is designed to show you the market like nobody else can. Sure, Belize is breathtakingly beautiful, the people are wonderful, and wait till you taste the food. But the real opportunity is the real estate investment potential. 2017 was the biggest year in tourism Belize has ever witnessed, and this year has started off even stronger. How does that translate to real estate investment? That's what you have to come see. There's all types of opportunity in Belize when it comes to real estate investing, including both long and short-term rentals, commercial and retail triple net properties, business opportunities, land acquisition, development, agriculture, and more. And as the only country in Latin America with English as its official language, it's easy to understand the law, property rights are strong, and contracts are in English. And in Ambergris Caye, a unique situation exists where demand for rentals continues to outstrip supply, creating a compelling environment for investors. So come see for yourself. Join me May 25th to 28th in Ambergris Caye, Belize, as we study the market, learn about the sustainable drivers, and tour lots of beautiful real estate. And like all of our field trips, there are no properties for sale during the weekend. Rather, you'll meet lots of local providers that will help educate you about the market so that you can follow up with them after the trip if the market is interesting to you. But that ball is always in your court. You'll receive their contact details, but they won't receive yours unless you give it to them. You've heard about Belize on the Real Estate Guys for all these years. Now come see what all the excitement is about. Plus, we'll have lots of time over meals and activities to talk about all things real estate. To get the details, go to the website at realestateguysradio.com and click on events where you'll find the Belize Discovery Trips. Once you register, you'll get information about our group hotel rates as well as travel details. So join me in Belize, May 25th to 28th. It's a beautiful country with lots of amazing possibilities, and the only thing missing is you. Go to realestateguysradio.com under events. I look forward to seeing you in beautiful Belize.
Hi, this is Gene Epstein, economics editor from Barron's, and you're listening to The Real Estate Guys.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Guys radio program. Thanks for tuning into the show. After a couple of weeks of the Investors Summit at Sea, we're back with our series on profitable niches, talking about international property. Does investing offshore make sense to you? Before we get back to our interview with Beth Clifford, it's time to play Real Estate Trivia, your chance to win a prize by knowing today's real estate trivia question. In just a minute, I'm going to give you the trivia question, which has something to do with our topic, kind of. As soon as you hear the question and think you know the answer, get us your best guess to trivia at realestateguysradio.com. Trivia at realestateguysradio.com. First person with the right answer gets a great prize. It's a copy of Robert Kiyosaki's excellent book, Second Chance. That can be yours if you know today's real estate trivia question. As soon as you hear it and want to take a guess, just send us your best guess to trivia at realestateguysradio.com. Include your name, the answer to the question, and your mailing address so we can send you the book. Last week on the show, it was part 2 of the 2018 Investors Summit at Sea. What a blast that was. Here's our trivia question. Which country builds the most ships? Yeah, we were out in the middle of the ocean on a beautiful cruise ship, so we asked which country builds the most ships? Well, according to Clarkson Research, China built more than 40% of the world's ships in 2017. Here's our real estate trivia question for this week. The TripAdvisor 2018 Traveler's Choice Awards list the top 10 airlines in the world. Only one U.S. carrier is on that list. Which one? Which U.S. carrier made the TripAdvisor 2018 Traveler's Choice Award list for the top airlines in the world? If you know or want to take a guess, send your best guess to trivia at realestateguysradio.com. Include your name, your mailing address, and the answer to the question. So if you're the winner, we can send you Robert Kiyosaki's Second Chance. That's today's real estate trivia question. It's our continuing series on profitable niches. This week we're talking about offshore investing, international investing, and we have international investor and developer Beth Clifford with us. And Beth, we were talking about the reason you might diversify to another country, and certainly there's the reasons that the market is different, the product type is different, but there's some other considerations.
Well, we talked a little bit about taxation, and so there's certainly taxation, and as like we said, Robert, both of us are not tax attorneys, right, but there are great international tax attorneys. And one of the things too is that some people will, it's not unknown for people going outside the United States that some of the professionals create fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Like, oh my God, that's the big boogeyman, and
yes,
you don't want to go outside the United States because, oh my God, you're all going to go to jail. Everybody's going to go to jail, and oh my God, and some of that is for their own self-interest so that they can go sell you a $40,000 package of compliance.
Right.
And so really, it's not that hard to be in compliance. And so just shop around. You've got to be in compliance wherever you go.
Well, that's a point. We're always going to talk about the way to do it legally and transparently. We're not one of those shows where, hey, here's the 7 things your attorney doesn't want you to know.
No.
Absolutely not. You got to work with professionals.
No, and all you need to go do is Google, international real estate compliance or FATCA reporting or know your customer or anything else, and you'll find out that there's 3 documents that you need to do every year.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
And so that's it, guys. All right. So this is not like the big boogeyman or anything else. Yes, you need to understand it. Would I recommend that for the first 2 years that you go do it, that you have the assistance of a professional in doing it so that you do it right? Absolutely. And then once that you get it done, great. But I mean, I think a lot of that, oh my God, it's so difficult. It's really not that hard to go do it. So anyways, let me just dispel a lot of that. So
Yes.
Get to know what the taxation looks like, get to understand what the compliance is. There's compliance when you go to different state borders as well.
Sure.
Or you go into different municipalities, where you go into Berkeley and you go own a multifamily in Berkeley. Well, guess what? You got to pay sales tax in Berkeley. So it's no different, right? So just understand that when you move into any different area, you're going to have the same compliance and taxation issues, regardless if you're in the United States or you go international. You just got to go strap it on and go do it. So just don't worry about it. The other is that there's currency. So there's a possibility that there's currency arbitrage. And so just be aware of that, correct? And so that can either benefit you or bite you. So
Right.
understand, people who are diversifying, you got our good friends on our borders, right? You've got Canadian and you've got Mexican. And so if you're in pesos or Canadian dollars, we've got people right now who are looking and who want to buy, and they're Canadians who want to buy, but their currency is down right now. And so
Right.
everything is looking expensive to them. But roll back 2 or 3 years ago when they were trading almost at par, the world was on sale for them.
Yep.
And so just be mindful of that and how you might have to have a hedge strategy on that. But that adds another complexity to you. And so you may want to go look at jurisdictions where they're neutral and they trade directly with the US dollar or not. So anyways, that's a whole nother way that you can benefit and or be bitten by going outside the jurisdiction or the United States.
Yeah, and that's a good point. There's 2 sides of it, right? There are jurisdictions like Panama where they use the U.S. dollar.
Yep.
So in many jurisdictions, though, real estate is sold in U.S. dollars, even though the local currency might be different. And I think
That's
one thing
correct.
to be aware of, you mentioned multifamily and workforce housing, the workforce is going to play in the local currency.
That's correct.
If you built and maybe took investors in U.S. dollars because you bought the real estate in U.S. dollars, you just have to understand, what is that exchange rate like? Can you readily exchange the currencies? I know you're in a market where there's a different currency, but it's not a standard currency that you can go trade across the counter easily.
Correct.
So you have to think about that as you're buying materials and so forth. But I think most of our audience are thinking, well, is there a way I could, own a property or 2 in other countries? And what are the things I have to worry about? And again, let's talk about this, because I've seen you do a masterful job of this over the years. We always talk about how real estate is a relationship business. And you go into a foreign country and maybe you don't even speak the language. Building local relationships is key. How do you get that done?
So obviously with having expertise, and everybody's got their expertise, you know who the major team players are that you need to go find,
Right.
correct? And so it usually boils down that you need 5 or 6 key resources that you've got to go start there,
Yeah.
right? If I go find these 5 people, then I can go find the next 20, correct? And it all waterfalls from that. The way I go into a market is I go in and I ask for help. I go in and I say, hey, this is what I'm looking to go do. I ask a lot of questions. I don't come in. You've heard me speak a couple of times. It's kind of the thing that I've been on in the last year, which is having an attitude of humility, not of hubris.
Yes.
And to come in and not be the big obnoxious American, but to come in and say, hey, I've got some ideas and some expertise, but I don't really understand how things go along. And I just go look for Class A players inside of the market. I go in and I go, who's successful here? Who are the big top names? Whose name keeps showing up? I do the same thing when I go into any market in the United States. If I'm
Yep.
driving around and I'm going into commercial, I'll be driving around, walking around the downtown. Well, who's the person person who's got the most properties that appear to have the 4 lease signs on them. It's like, who's the broker that seems to have their picture in every window? Well, I don't know. Well, that seems to be the top agent, and that seems to be the top banker. That's like, hey, this project is being funded by this person or this. It's like you spend enough time in the property and you say, hey, who are the top people? Who's the biggest law firm? Go in and meet with the largest law firm and ask them, what are your clients? What are the top 3 law firms in the country? How big are they? All right, I'm going to go meet with every one of them. Tell me who your clients are. Who are the movers and shakers in this place? Who are the top employers in the nation? So just go find out who the A players are. Here's what the deal is. A players fly with A players. C players fly with C players.
Yeah.
That's just the rule of the world, correct?
Well, it took a while to learn that for me. I know one of the things you've taught me is that when you hire the best, it doesn't cost you money, it makes you money.
It isn't. And so, when you play with the A players, it doesn't cost you more money, and you're going to get into their contact database, and they want to play with other A players.
Right.
Because when they see you as an A player, then they know you're going to introduce them to A players.
Yep.
And then they know that they're going to get more out of you. Does that make sense? And so I just always go and I look for who are the biggest, who are the brightest, who are those people.
Yeah.
And they're not the people who are hanging out at the airport and the OTAs are trying to sell you a timeshare. Those are not the people that
Usually
you want to
not.
go. Probably not the people that you want to go with. And so when you just go in and say, hey, I'm new to the market, I have some ideas, I come with some expertise in a different market, I'm trying to find a way where I can take some of what I've done in market X, and I would love to leverage, and how could that possibly fit down here in what you're doing?
Yeah.
Could I spend 20 minutes of your time, buy you a cup of coffee, let's have lunch. I'd love to hear about how what you're doing is successful, what's emerging in your market, and where do you see where you're successful, where could that blend in some of the ideas that I have? Or am I completely off base here? And you ask that question. And that's a great opening question. And then you shut up and you listen.
Right.
Okay? You don't come in and talk about how you're the biggest and the best and boo-hoo-hoo and go to this hubris side. You just listen. Because, people love to talk about themselves, and they should. And that's what the goal is. The goal is to find team members who get excited that you understand that they have great value and that you elicit from them the opportunity for them to be a team player with you. Yeah. And you get them excited about, wow, I get it. So you see this and you see that and you've been successful there. Well, what if I took what you've got and married it with what I've got? Do you think that the two of us and the way that we're having this very beginning conversation, do you see where, one, me plus you, one could make 3 together? And you see where that magic could be. And then that's how I typically, that's what I go with everybody. How can 1 + 1 make 3?
Well, another great point about that is when you do find an A player, they tend to know the other A players.
They know only A player. They typically know all the A players.
You need those 5 people. You don't need to find 5. If you find 1 or 2, they're going to introduce you to the other 3.
And that was like, so many of my strategies have been like, it's always about business development. So when you go do business development is about creating business relationships. It's about your business to business relationships as opposed to your business to customer, B2C, business to customer relationships.
Yep.
When you create a company, you've always got to create your business to business relationships. And when you do those, you're levering off of that. So when I create my business to my financial partner, that's my B2B. So now all of a sudden I've got money. That's a huge thing. Business to business, I get my vendors together. Big vendors. Well, guess what? Vendors all work together. They all know each other, correct? Banks all know each other. Vendors all know each other. So those are your B2B relationships. Get those done. And then you're always going to have to go do your B2C, which is your business to customer. Well, those are one-to-one relationship, and those are expensive to go do. But if I can go do a business development relationship that goes and gets me introduced to a lot of customers, which is what I did with Hilton, correct? So I built a resort property. And so rather than going out and trying to find a million possible people who want to sleep in my beds in my hotel, I instead had a strategy, which is I'm going to go find somebody who already has a lot of customers.
Yes.
And with one phone call and a lot of relationship, but with one B2B relationship, I got introduced to 75 million customers.
Right.
So that is worth the relationship of building those B2B relationships. And the way you do that is through credibility of yourself, leverage of yourself. And it goes back to kind of my ethos or my word that I kind of said. I did it with Gary Vaynerchuk. It kind of popped out, and then all of a sudden Gary said you should brand that, which is die executing.
Right.
Because if your brand is always about getting stuff done, your expertise is about I get it done, die executing, get it done, and that you're leveraging and you're coming in and you're saying, hey, look, I came out of multifamily doing great in Sacramento, and I'm going into workforce housing in Mexico. And so you're going into those B2B relationships and said, I've been successful doing that, but hey, I want to talk to you business to business. I want to lever that expertise in your market with you. How can you and I 1 + 1 make 3 in this market?
Well, this is another nuance of relationship, and that's reputation. You
Yes.
start with a relationship and you go in humble and you ask for help, which, by the way, for the men in the audience, that's kind of a hard thing to do, but I've learned from Beth, you just ask, hey, I need your help on this. Hey, I'm new here. And it's amazing how many people will help you. And you have that humility. Now you're building a relationship. That gets around. And pretty soon your reputation is of one that you're a team player. You're looking for good strategic partners. You're not looking to bulldoze or over people. And I think as we cross a border, like from a country to a country, we think, well, gosh, I don't know anybody down there and it's so different. At the end of the day, you know, people are the same everywhere. There's the great people, there's the other people, there's people you'd want to be in business with, and you just have to search that out. They're not going to come knocking on your door. You got to go find them.
They do. You know, what you said is right, Robert. I mean, you know, people are the same. I've traveled to 48 countries. That's not a lot, but I've traveled to 48 countries. People are the same. Our human nature is the same everywhere. Everybody's putting their pants on one leg at a time. Everybody cares about their families. We're still all humans. We all have our still driving needs about what drives us, what we want to go do. People still want to take care of their families. People still want to take care of their friends. Nothing's different when you cross borders, right? People's objectives are all the same. Now, their cultures change and how they do business may be different, and you need to become aware of that when you're going through the cultures, and that is different about how you go do business. But everybody wants to be respected. Nobody wants somebody to come in and be the ugly American and be told how to go do things. People don't want to be domineered. People want to be respected everywhere they go. And so if you keep it to those basic human niceties that you go do, be aware of the culture that you work in. I don't look at it. I don't hold that I'm an American. I don't say, I go in, I say, look, you know, I'm an American. I'm not going to become what your culture is. I'm going to come in. I am an American. I am, and I'll apologize. I said, I'm sorry. I'm basically, at the end of the day, I'm a New Yorker. So I talk fast. My yes is a yes. My no is a no. My handshake is an agreement. I'm transparent. What you see is what you get. I'm not going to become your culture. I respect your culture, but I'm not going to apologize for my culture.
Right.
And so that's who I am. And I hope I don't offend who I am, but that's what you're going to see. What you see is what you're going to get with me. And people work it through. People respect your culture. I respect your culture. And so you're just doing business with people. That's it. Simple.
Yep. Good stuff. All right, if we have someone out there listening who's thinking, wow, you know, I've been thinking about investing offshore. I'm a little intimidated by it. What would you say to that person?
I say, first of all, I think, Robert, you've got a great real estate tour that you do. And it does come down into one of the markets that I'm involved in. And so that's a great thing to go do. So that would be...
Go test drive the market.
Go just test drive what it's like to go on a real estate due diligence tour outside the United States.
Yep.
Just go on one.
Right.
You know, and like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You know, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to go spend, I don't know, what is your trip? 4 days, Robert?
4 days, 3 nights. Yeah.
4 days, 3 nights. So the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to go see how somebody goes and does due diligence, who you go meet, who the movers and shakers are, how you get to know what a market looks like, how you get to know what the jurisdiction goes and looks like. And so you would leave like with yours, and there's other people who do it as well.
Yep.
Go on one of those tours and see what is the due diligence package that somebody puts together. And it's just eye-opening, right?
Right.
To go see, oh my God, what does somebody go put together in order to go across the lines? So then you know if you decide, that's not the market that I want to go do, then the best thing that you got out of, you know, you basically got a year of education that you would have had to have done, which is what are the important things I need to go do if I'm going to go into another jurisdiction, another foreign country. You just bootstrapped yourself. You took a year of Googling and staying up all night and red eyes and not knowing if you got everything. You got it all done in 4 days.
Yeah.
And now you've got everything to say, that market, not so much, or that market, like it, and I want to go do more. I've got the template to go to market Y, which is I'm thinking I'm from Turkey. I have my family's in Turkey, and now I think I want to go take that due diligence and go home and this summer and go to Turkey and go do that due diligence in my home country of Turkey.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it's a good point. We on the field trips that we do, especially internationally, we always talk about many of the fundamentals that are, regardless of market, that those questions you do have to ask. So good stuff. So we appreciate your input, and always great to be around your vibrancy. Congratulations on the project here, and I can't wait to see you on next year's Investor Summit at Sea.
I can't either. I've already signed up.
Excellent. This
I
year,
can't wait.
You weren't able to make the ship part. We had you on land for a couple of days, but next year we're going to get Beth on the ship with us, and it's going to be amazing. So thanks for your time and for sharing your wisdom with us.
You bet, and thank you. And hey, real estate guys, stay strong. You know, it's a roaring market. There's opportunity everywhere. So look forward to seeing if they've got any questions. They know they can get through to me through you. Thanks, Robert.
That's Beth Clifford. We're talking about diversifying internationally in your real estate portfolio today on the Real Estate Guys radio program.
Need help with your real estate investment portfolio? Check out the resources page at realestateguysradio.com.
Hi, this is Patrick Donahoe, CEO of Paradigm Life. Wall Street and banks spend billions of dollars per year in advertising with the goal to convince you that they are the solution. But take a look around. None of their advice has worked. If you're listening to this, odds are pretty good that you're already a real estate investor, or at least becoming one. So why do you do it? Is it to hedge inflation, the tax benefits, or maybe it's to get your money away from Wall Street? It's because of these benefits and so many more that I created the Real Estate Investor's Guide to the Perpetual Wealth Strategy. When you combine successful real estate investing with the Perpetual Wealth Strategy, you have the recipe for what has helped the wealthy to establish their financial well-being for decades. You can download the Real Estate Investor's Guide to the Perpetual Wealth Strategy today by clicking the Resources tab on the Real Estate Guys Radio homepage. Don't wait, go download it now.
Imagine listening in as two real-world apartment investing experts share their best ideas and strategies. Well, now you can. When you listen to the Old Capital podcast featuring Michael Becker and Paul Peebles, you'll learn from two seasoned pros who funded and syndicated hundreds of millions of dollars in apartments. Each episode is chock full of expert advice, real-world wisdom, and interviews with real-life investors. For details about how you can listen to the Old Capital podcast, send an email to ocp@realestateguysradio.com. When you do, we'll send you Michael Becker's personal due diligence checklist free of charge. Email your request to OCP, Old Capital Podcast, @realestateguysradio.com.
Hi, this is Mauricio Raul, the founder and CEO of Premier Law Group, and you're listening to The Real Estate Guys.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Guys radio program. Thanks for tuning into the show. One of the best skills you can possibly learn no matter what you want to do in your life is the skill of sales. Coming up, it's how to win funds and influence people. Our 2-day workshop on selling skills, and this is an awesome event. I love this event because I don't hardly do anything. It's mostly Russell Gray, and I'll tell you, he's masterful at it. It's coming up at the end of June. You get all the details on the website at realestateguysradio.com. We're talking about profitable niches, and this week, international investing. Is that for you? Great to hear from powerhouse Beth Clifford.
Yeah, she's a dynamo. You think about the things that she's accomplished in her career. Every time I just recount that, I listen to her talk. I've never failed to learn something every time she opens her mouth. I mean, it's just amazing, the breadth of her experience and her accomplishments. And, when it comes to this concept of going offshore and investing offshore, there is quite a bit more work that you have to do. And when you think about that and how Beth has been able to approach that, everything from learning the culture to figuring out how to fit into the environment and get along with all of the people you need to get along with, including the government and the regulators and the bankers and all of the people, and then put together teams that can actually get things done so that you can invest successfully even though you don't live there. She's probably nobody better at it than Beth.
Yeah, pretty amazing. And, she's got this bigger perspective. One of the things we didn't talk about her background is she had a business background on Wall Street long before she even got into real estate. And so there was an international component to that too. So she's always been kind of she called herself a New Yorker at heart. That's kind of how she sees herself. But like a lot of New Yorkers, they have a world view. And if you go to New York City, you're going to definitely go to the different parts of the town that are named after other countries. You're going to meet all kinds of people from, all over the world. And depending on where you live, you may live in a place that's very diverse or not. But your real estate portfolio can be very diverse. And I thought it was great that she recommended, getting out and seeing a market. Specifically, one of our trips, we do field trips, which are designed not to sell any real estate, but to show people markets and kind of through the eyes of an investor. In fact, we've got one coming up that's an international destination. Our trip we do a few times a year to Belize is coming up. And that'd be a great way to, one, see a potential market for sure, but also find out some of those questions that you need to ask when you're thinking about a market you're not used to.
Well, that's really the key. We started doing field trips way, way back. 15 years ago at least. And we would go into out-of-state markets. Back then, we were operating out of California. And we would go to Phoenix. We would go to Nevada, Las Vegas. We would go to Texas. We would go to different places. And it was foreign. If you're living in California, even going to Nevada was foreign. You had different rules, different values. You didn't know the neighborhoods. So the further we got out from our center, we started to learn how to approach a market. And I learned a lot. There were times when I would go to markets with you, Robert, and I wasn't really that interested in the market. But the process of how you look at a market when you don't know a market, the kind of questions you ask, the things you look for, because you can do a certain amount of research from a distance, and then there's things you only pick up by being there. Then when that translated and we started doing the offshore trips, we started going to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, and then ultimately we ended up going to Belize. That was a great experience for me because I was able to compare and contrast both domestic markets. I could compare different markets in the United States to each other, but then I could also compare them to offshore markets. And then I ended up getting a chance to go to Cabo, and then I could look at Belize through the eyes of Cabo. And that really helped me understand and appreciate what the opportunity was. I think what I learned through all of that is the importance of traveling, the importance of getting out there. You can only do so much research online. You can only learn so much in a book or reading a blog or listening to a podcast. You should do all those things, and that's great, but that's the beginning of the adventure. Ultimately, as a real estate investor, you got to get out and, we used to call the trips kick in the dirt. In this case, it's kick in the sand, but you got to get out there and see it and meet people and get a feel for what's going on and see it with your own eyes.
Beth talked about, hey, you come on the trip, the worst thing that happens is you have a good time, and that's true. We always have a lot of fun, and we get one-on-one time with listeners, which is awesome. We talk all things real estate, whatever you're interested in. We're going to have meals together and hang out together, but you'll start to see not only from us, but certainly from the people on the trip, what they're looking for. What are the things that stand out, that make an impression? And there's just a ton to learn. So if you're interested in learning about an international market, specifically if you're interested in Belize, then come on the trip. It's right around the corner. You get the details on our website at realestateguysradio.com under events. But if you're thinking about venturing out, I would say try it on. If you haven't been to a place and you've heard about it, why not take a trip there? What I like to do is make some arrangements in advance, so I'm not coming in 100% cold. So maybe you can reach out and see who do you know that knows someone in the marketplace or has an affiliation with somebody or someone that you find online that looks reputable, and get out there and kick the dirt a little bit. It's a big world. I would say if you look at your portfolio 20 years from now, you're thinking, I wish I was a little more diversified 20 years from now. Well, now's the time to make the effort. So big thanks to Beth Clifford for her time and attention today. And next week, we'll talk about another profitable niche you might consider as a real estate investor. Until then, go out and make some equity happen.
This episode of the Real Estate Guys radio show is brought to you by Paradigm Life. Powerful cash management strategies using life insurance. Learn more at beyourbank.com. Mid-South Home Buyers. Low-cost, turnkey cash flow properties in Memphis, Tennessee. Corporate Direct. Asset protection strategies for real estate investors from attorney and Rich Dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Find these and other great companies under the Resources tab at realestateguysradio.com. To learn how you can expose your product or service to the Real Estate Guys audience, call 888-489-7723 extension 4. That's 888-489-7723 extension 4. Or use the feedback page at realestateguysradio.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week right here on the Real Estate Guys Radio Show.